Prayer by Alderman Mark Bettencourt, please.
Almighty God, we ask for your blessing upon the members of this council as we assemble here in this chamber to conduct the ongoing business of our city. With your guidance, we will strive to ensure that all our decisions are for the common good, and your inspiration will instill respect, compassion, and thoughtfulness in all our deliberations. Give us the strength and wisdom to lead by example as the people's representatives, and that peace and harmony will mark all our proceedings and keep us faithful to the trust placed in us by the citizens of your community. Amen.
Amen. Alderman Nash, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. We'll begin with citizen comment general this evening. The first person signed up is Mr. Marvin Cerruto.
Marvin Cerruto, 100 Star Street, the United States of America, which is a republic, not a democracy. I'm glad to hear that we have fireworks this year. I have a donation here, Miss Betsy in tradition, with a return envelope with a receipt. I'd also like to say if you don't read the Norwich Nuggets in Facebook, you should read the recent Norwich Nugget that Beryl Fishbone has written. It's probably one of the best pieces of journalism I've ever read in my life. I'm 63 years old. I did graduate with Gordon Rule degree, and I know a little bit about writing myself. And now we'll get serious. The last year and a half has been pretty disgusting, and I'm not ashamed to say it. And the last year and a half has really looked bad for elected officials, from the White House to the State House to city halls. You have no idea what I've been through. You have no idea what I go through with what has happened to me in my life because of elected officials. So, I have some direction for elected officials. This year is going to be different. You're going to raise the bar. You're going to have higher standards. You're going to be more transparent. And you're going to listen to citizens. You're going to listen to taxpayers. Because the perception is that you just don't do it. And that's everybody. From the White House right down to City Hall. I'm looking at 7 seats up here. I'm thinking maybe next year if we had 0 votes and there were 7 empty seats for a year, maybe that'd be a cool thing. What do you think? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Frank Wilcox.
Hello, excuse me for being a little nervous. I'm not a public speaker. This is on a personal note more than anything.
Excuse me, sir. Could we have your address?
136 Hunters Road.
Thank you.
To preface my statement, understand that this has been an ongoing issue for about 15 years. I live on Social Security only, so I try to be careful with how I spend my money. Now at the age of 80, instead of being able to relax and enjoy my remaining years, I'm having my home taken away from me through no fault of my own. In 1996, I bought a 20-year-old mobile home. It was manufactured in 1976. I paid $3,500 for it. I added a shed, put a shed in, which raised the assessment value. So I had an assessment value of $5,000. In the year 2000, it reassessed once again at $5,000. In 2005, I got an assessment of $28,500. Now, I was told that other mobile homes in the area were assessed for the new assessment value, and that it was based on a mobile home park in Middletown, Rhode Island. Foolishness, as far as I'm concerned. At a different time, I was told that all mobile home values were based on the square footage. My response to that was, if a Ford and a Porsche had the same square footage, would they be assessed the same? I doubt it. After going from one city office to another, trying to rectify this situation, while at the city assessor's office, I asked to see a copy of the specs for my home. It turned out that the assessment company assumed that one side of the street were odd numbers side and the other side were even number sides. Well, in Oakland Heights, the lots are sequential. So I ended up with my next door neighbor's evaluation, not mine. I went back and tried to rectify it. The picture that I had on the paper that I have is of my neighbors. I had to bring my picture of my mobile home down to the assessor's office because they would not come up and take care of this. Now, I don't have air conditioning. That was on the assessment and everything. But the bottom line is, I was not allowed for 5 years to change the assessment. Nobody would change it. And so I just went, decided, okay, I've got to take it to court. That's what I was told by the city attorney back then. I go down, I get papers to take it to start the process, find out that I need to pay a lawyer, I need to pay a private assessor, I need to pay for the court papers and any further court papers. If I lose, I have to pay the city attorney and all the fees of the city. If I win, the city just walks away. I still have to pay my attorney and all the court costs. Not a level playing field. So I didn't do it, okay? What I did do was I took my assessment for $5,000, because mobile homes don't increase in value, and I took whatever the mill rate was for that year, and I would write a check for that amount. Now, instead of changing that assessment in the beginning, I was assessed for $28,500 for 5 years. Didn't pay it, but I was assessed for it. Now when I make my check out, it goes to arrearages, not to my tax payments. So therefore, now I owe supposedly $14,000 in taxes. As it stands now, my home is up for auction on July 7th. Okay? I understand, and I called, matter of fact, I called Mayor Nystrom's office and was told that it was too late to do anything about it. That's fine. I will accept that. But my option now, at my age, is I either go to senior housing or become a state ward. What do you want from me? I'm living in this city, I'm paying taxes, because nobody would rectify this situation. Everybody stonewalled me. Here's what I'm stuck with. I am losing my home through no fault of my own. I'd like to thank you all for letting me vent. Now I can live with whatever happens to my home. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. General comment is still open. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to the council about any item?
Sorry, did not bring my cane tonight. Brian Kovalar, 16 Hobart Avenue. Just a couple comments in this open area. At the last meeting, it was kind of a little sketchy the way in which it was brought to the public. The city council rules do specify that general public comment would be during the second meeting of the month. I understand that at the very beginning, Mayor Nystrom said, well, this is actually a continuation of the first meeting, and so those rules do not apply. However, later in the meeting, there was also on the agenda public comment available for the last two resolutions. The last two resolutions were pulled in a manner that I've never seen before, and I question whether or not it was actually legal. If you listen to the council meeting, the mayor said that he was just going to ignore them. And then the gavel to adjourn the meeting. Just ignoring them rather than say, I'm going to pull them, which is the language that I normally expected. So that was, the other thing that I wanted to bring up, I watched Deanne's presentation from home. She did a very good job. I was impressed. Well-researched, good teamwork, but again, it points out one of the technical problems. In the stream, you couldn't see a single thing on the screen. It was blown out. No letters, not even highlights. I did some screen captures that I can share later. But there are small, very inexpensive boxes that you could switch between the camera and the projector and do a very, very clear image on the screen so anybody at home can read those bullets that she's putting up there. They put a lot of work into it. Sure would have liked to have seen it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak under general citizen comment? Again, anyone else like to speak under citizen general comment? Third time. Anyone else under citizen comment general? Seeing no one else, I then declare it closed. Thank you.
Second and reading action on the below ordinance that was previously presented. Ordinance number 1, an ordinance amending sections 8-74, 8-75, and 8-77 of Article 4 of Chapter 8 of the Code of Ordinances pertaining to the Volunteer Firefighter Relief Fund Plan of the City of Norwich.
I'd entertain a motion, please, to bring this to the floor. Is there such a motion? Alderwoman Gould, second Alderman Nash. Is there discussion? Yes, Alderman DeLucia, please.
I would like to start by sharing a memo from the comptroller with the members of the council. Pass one down. Should be 8 of them.
You got one more?
Yeah. You need one more?
Please,
There it is.
yeah.
No, it's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Yes, and I'd like to ask the comptroller to come to the podium, please.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for being here tonight. So this memo came from your office. Actually, you wrote it for us, and all the members of the council were on the recipients list on this memo, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so the reason why I'm sharing this with everyone, because I want to refer to specific things, I wanted everybody to see the same thing. The big takeaway here is, do we support our volunteers, our volunteer firefighters? Absolutely. Do we? Does this council and the city believe that we should have a relief fund, a pension plan in place for our volunteers? We're one of a few cities that say yes, and I hold with that. My challenge with this is actually twofold. First, if you look at the proposal, which is the last column on the back page in the matrix that Josh provided, you'll see that the changes are substantial. Okay, when you look at the first row, a person could retire with 20 years of service when compared to police, fire, and the general city pension plan, it's 25 years. The number of years that count towards retirement, 40, compared to low 30 or low 30s across the board on the other bargaining units. Okay, and then in the bottom row, survivorship benefits, 100% spouse benefits, and we spoke about this at this council when this was first presented to us, that nowhere does that happen. I mean, now pension plans, plan design across the board. Retirees have to take a smaller pension, correct, Josh, in order to save benefits for surviving spouse. Okay? And in an action that we're going to take up later on, that's part of what was negotiated in the most recent contract with the firefighters, correct? So,
Yes.
so thank you. So I realize that, well, I guess let me finish that point. So I'm concerned with the plan design for this one specific group where benefits are being increased nearly across the board on all the major design elements, when every other employee bargaining unit has had the city negotiate to reduce those benefits. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, yeah, I think you see the benefits increasing and the other groups have been decreasing, but you also, I also looked at the gross actual cost of these benefits, and it's, relatively small compared to the, changes in the other pension plans.
Well, I'll come back to that. But so fair to say then, in a nutshell, that this proposed new plan is not in alignment with the retirement benefits packages for the rest of our CBAs in the city of Norwich.
Yeah, it's difficult to, I placed it just so you could see the trajectory of the benefits, but it's difficult to really, they seem to be apples and oranges to me, but, that's my take on it. But yeah, these benefits are proposed to be increased.
Okay, thank you for that. My second point, and you just kind of led me there, is you're right when you say relatively small increase, but that is for next year. But retirement plans are legacy obligations, right? Until this ordinance would ever be changed again, the cost would conceivably increase each and every year.
Right. These are the actuarial evaluation of the cost. So they're projecting out the long-term costs and saying, you know, these are the increases for funding the pieces of the next few years. So this is this $25,000 for 1 year and 42 for the next. That's, you know, the total cost to the city for those fiscal years.
And it's fair enough and it's justified to say that, you know, a volunteer firefighter who has spent a significant amount of their adult life in the service of the city, right, deserves this benefit, no argument, right? But then to say, oh, and that person's spouse, significant other, life partner will also receive that benefit at 100% for the rest of their lives. That's you're starting. You know, I hope my colleagues on council are starting to see my concerns, right? Where we are out of alignment with the people who work for the city day in and day out, and in their pension, in their benefit package, and we are adding to our legacy obligation, not just for the life of the retiree, but for the life of that next person in their family. That's a serious cause for concern. And I know we say, well, you know, as you just said, well, it's a relatively small amount. It's $25,000. At one point it would be $42,000, whatever the case may be. We just cut $2.2 million from the city's budget at the 11th hour. We made some very difficult cuts. It's hard for me to say we've got an extra 25 grand laying around, and then know that that is going to, that amount of money or whatever the increase in course over time is going to continue long after all of us are gone. That's a challenge. That I'm not preaching to you, but that I think you see my challenges, and I appreciate the fact that you gave us this analysis so that we could really see the picture clearly. All right. Personally, I'm a strong union person. I believe that retirement benefits and health insurance are, we already know, those are the huge factors now, right, in negotiations. And the costs are escalating out of control. And I feel that our folks that serve the city deserve those benefits. But we have a responsibility to the taxpayers. That's all I have for the comptroller, and I'll yield the floor, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there further? Yes, I'm sorry. Alderman Gould.
Okay, Josh. What's the average city policeman collecting for a pension when he retires?
I couldn't tell you offhand. I'd say
$20,000, $25,000, $30,000. Am I in the ballpark?
Probably in the $50,000 range.
$50,000. Okay. And the average firefighter, when he retires, what is he getting for a pension from the city? 25, 30, 40, somewhere in that neighborhood?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. And tell me, how much does the average volunteer firefighter who, and remember, this is not a pension he's getting. This is the relief fund. What does the average volunteer firefighter who is retired from the city get a year?
It varies greatly. So the ones who stopped active duty in the 1990s, it could be a $200 or $300 a month. The ones who are
wait. $200 or $300 a month?
Yeah.
Versus a retired police officer or firefighter who's getting $5,000 a month.
Right.
So we're talking apples and oranges here, Alderman DeLucia. It's a relief fund to thank that volunteer for dedicating 25 or 30 years of his or her lifetime to the city. This is not a pension. So we can't even say, oh, the obligation is absolute. We have how many retired firefighters and how many retired police officers? MPU, what's their pension obligation? Because I look at the pension minutes, we have pensioners from MPU who are getting $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a year. So please do not confuse the volunteer firefighter relief fund with a pension obligation to the city. It's disingenuous at best. And we owe a debt of gratitude to the volunteers, and if they get $200 or $300 a month from the city as a thank you, because they spent 25 or 30 years of their life volunteering, you cannot compare it to what the pension obligations are for someone who retires from the city of Norwich as a firefighter, police officer, building official, city clerk, assessor. Come on.
Alderman Wilson, please.
So first, thank you again for acknowledging me. So I will say, I think part of it is we have to look at this as a big picture. I think the biggest piece is we just cut $2.2 million out of a budget. So it's not, a lot of people took hurt in that. So I think part of it is we're looking down the road where things are. Secondly, when we look at it, if I look in this memo at the top, one of the pieces it says is the other tools of the tax abatement for which on September 21st, 2020, so that was this past year, the City Council approved Ordinance 1791 to increase the maximum abatement from $1,000 to $1,500 in fiscal year 2021-2022 and to $2,000 in fiscal year 2022-2023. So on top of the $300 that some may be getting, or it could be less, they are also getting that tax abatement.
Not everybody.
I think, I have
Excuse
the
me.
floor. I have the floor.
One person speaking at a time.
So that's an opportunity that they have if they meet certain criteria. I mean, we know that. So to say that, you know, it's just the small 300 or whatever the amount is the only token the city is giving. There are other ways or other opportunities for individuals to, over the time that they are serving, get other benefits from the city. So to say that the relief fund is the only thing that we have out here for volunteers is not what I want to say. The second part is when we look at this, we're talking parity. You may think it's apples to oranges. Every dollar we spend, we're liable to the taxpayer. So we sat up here last Monday and got $2.2 million out of the budget. Can't sit here and approve an increase in a line item when we cut some very drastic things that some departments needed. I mean, to think about it, that $25,000 could go towards a position within the city and some of the departments to handle some of the things that they need, a piece of equipment. So I think we have to look at it from a bigger picture. It's money that's got to be spent or would be added to the budget. The other part is when we look at this, I don't think anyone up here is saying that we don't thank or appreciate the job that our volunteers do in the city. I think they do a phenomenal job. We sit here, this is no different than what every union, every city employee's union goes through when they negotiate the contract. There are things that are give and take. And those, we can't even compare police officers and NPU and other departments. That's their career. So I know most other volunteers, being a volunteer firefighter is not their only job. However, police on the paid side, firefighters on the paid side, that is their career job that they have been hired to do here in the city, which comes with that salary. So that's their job that they're taking on, and it's they've got to meet certain criteria to get to that $50,000 or whatever the amount is for their retirement. So I think the other part that we have to sit here and see is volunteers, many have other careers. So we appreciate everything that they do. The argument here that I think Alderman DeLucia is making is, one, we look at the change in the survivor benefits, It may be, you may think it's only 10%, but that can become something as we're looking, the number is bigger. The amount each year is bigger. The second part is, when we look at it, we're being fiscally responsible at this moment. We just got $2.2 million out of the budget, and we told departments that we could not give them certain things because we're trying to live within a certain number. And just to add to that, it's just not the way to go at this moment. But I think the thing has to be said. Nobody's up here saying that we don't like volunteers or thank them for their service. They're not losing anything from it staying the same. They're not losing anything. We're not taking anything away from them. And we thank them for what they do. But the bigger picture is we're here sitting being fiscally responsible for the other areas of the budget. This has an impact. It goes in. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Do you still need our comptroller? I'm just asking.
I don't.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Josh. Yeah, please, it's yours.
I can read.
No.
Sorry, I can't help myself sometimes. Well, this is a, difficult kind of decision because obviously, they deserve, pretty much whatever benefit they get. I think public safety people, I collect a hazardous duty pension myself from the state, so it's, I'm kind of sympathetic. But the fact of the matter is we did do what we did. We're not talking about reducing a benefit. We're talking about a little history, and please, I'll ask the city manager to correct me if I'm screwed up, which could happen. The current level was changed to what it is now and by ordinance in 2015. I believe the proposed one would restore the changes that were made back then, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
That's correct, thank you. So, and it's not like we're looking at, cutting anything or whatever. We're just not looking at going back against a trend that was established in 2015. So, I have a hard time doing this now after the issues from last week. None of these people are undeserving for what they get, but from a collective bargaining standpoint, I kind of also, although it's not the same thing, I'll agree with Alderwoman Gould, it is apples and oranges, but I do believe there's an impact. And we've just asked our career firefighters to take something that they did in negotiations, which I think will benefit the city in the long run, and I appreciate that. And that was a difficult choice to make on their end. The difficult choices we're making on our end. So I think the timing's just bad here, to be honest with you. I have a hard time doing anything with this after last week. Thank you.
Other members, questions, comments? Alderman Gould.
I'm flabbergasted, absolutely flabbergasted, that 20 years of service, unpaid service to the city of Norwich, and now we are going to quibble over a $3 increase to the TCD residents. We're going to quibble about $3. 20 years of service to the city. No, yes, I understand most of the volunteer firefighters have other careers, but they have to give 20 years of consecutive service to the city with no pay. And now we're going to quibble about we're putting $3 or $6 on the taxpayer. You're talking about a relief plan versus a pension. These are apples and oranges. Apples and oranges. It's unbelievable to me. Just absolutely unbelievable to me. This has nothing to do with the police department, fire department, what a union negotiates. City Hall, municipal, this is not, These people are not in a union.
Excuse me, please. While the person is speaking, please put your arms down and show respect. I will be happy to call on you both. The floor is still yours.
And the $1,500 tax abatement. So understand one thing, you don't get $1,500 because if you're a 25-year-old kid who owns a car that's worth $3,000, you get what the car's taxed on. You don't get to bank the other $1,000. If you rent a home in the city of Norwich and you're 60 and you only have a car, you only get what the taxes are on the car. It's not $1,500 in the bank that you can draw on and use again at another time or any other time. So the $1,500, again, it's a token, but you don't automatically get it because you're signed up on a roster. You have to meet certain requirements. You have to make a percentage of calls. You have to go to training. You're just not a name on a list. You are getting out of bed in the middle of the night, rushing into a burning building, or getting away from your Thanksgiving table to go help somebody who's having a medical emergency or who's cracked up their car. I would love to see who in this room wants to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning in the middle of a blizzard and go out for a nosebleed. But we do that every single day, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. And we are now going to quibble about $3 a year. I'm disgusted. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Wilson.
So first, I will say thank you for the lesson. Listen, I sit up here and I know exactly how it works. I know it's not money that you're getting in the bank. So trust me, I know exactly what I was referring to when I said $1,500 and $2,000. I know there are requirements, just like with any of the retirement plans, there are requirements that you must meet. So that was my point. Is there were requirements, and I once out of my mouth did I say that they're getting $2,000 or $1,500 in their bank account. So thank you with that point. Next, we sit here talking about it's just $2 or it's just $3, and yet we've sat up here during public hearings and watched people on fixed incomes. We just watched a gentleman get up here and talk about losing his home on a fixed income, and we're talking about it's just $2 or $3. That may be $2 or $3 that certain individuals may not be able to pay. So we're looking at this. We sat up here cutting $2.2 million. We've watched individuals get up here and talk about not being able to pay that on a fixed income. And we're just being responsible. We're not saying that we dislike volunteers or that they don't deserve it. We have to look at things from a big picture. We represent all taxpayers. And we watch people from the CCD and the TCD come stand up here and say that even where they are now with their mill rate bill, that another $1 or $2, and it would be tough to pay it. So I think, to say that it's just $2 or it's just $3, it's someone's money that they have to pay to the city at the end of the day. And it's just us being responsible, thinking of every cent that each individual pays to the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman DeLucia.
I would just add to Alderman Wilson's comment that, when we hear or when we're discussing adding $25,000, $42,000 to the school budget, we hear comments about how people are going to be eating cat food in the dark. So, you can say that my argument is disingenuous. It is not. But at least I don't argue both sides of an argument depending on who's going to benefit. This, as Alderman Wilson said, this is purely a fiscal responsibility decision. Increasing legacy costs for as far into the future as you can see, unless this ordinance would be changed again, is just not fiscally responsible in a year where we were shorted $3.5 million learned of it at the 11th hour, and had to find $2.2 million in cuts. And by the way, we're still not 100% sold, or sure, I should say, or confident about the 1.3 that we promised the Board of Ed, whether we'll actually have that to give. So yeah, it's down to the nickels and the dimes. In a year like this, absolutely right. And I said a week ago that everybody was going to have to feel a little bit of pain, and I meant everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on this ordinance? Well, I'll add in a little, and I try not to repeat. My association with this ordinance goes all the way back to when I co-sponsored it in Hartford. And we did so because we were concerned about recruiting volunteer firefighters. And I can tell you at a time across the state, there are a lot more volunteer firefighters then than there are now. All you have to do is look at the town of Preston, look at the town of Waterford, who made some abrupt changes without any involvement of their members, and now their volunteer houses are slowly dying. And that's the word in Waterford. The study that was authorized by some members of this council pointed out that we are unique, that we're blessed, that we have all these volunteer firefighters across the city. And I'm not going to dispute the concern that you mentioned, Alderman DeLucia, but in a sense of reality, I think, is needed here, because it's lacking in some of the discussion. $2 to $3 for a household and a TCD for the year. The members themselves are paying a $2 increase per month, so that's $24 more themselves. They have to contribute to this as well in order to participate. The small stipend that the city contributes, they have to match it, and it always had to match it. And when it began, there were a number of volunteer firemen who never had the money then to buy back the years of service that they gave this city, and they're not all in it. I don't want that misconception staying out there. They're not all in this plan by any shape and imagination. I just attended a program, a picnic over at Ockham this weekend, and they acknowledged a firefighter's 60 years of service. 60 years this man has given to the city. There's another gentleman, Yannick, has even more years of service than that. I won't say his name, but I really think it's broader than apples and oranges, the difference here. They contribute into themselves, their costs are going up. The value that is paid out to someone, it's not a pension. It's a stipend, and it's a way to say thank you for all the years of service. And think about the cost avoidance. If you had to man paid fire service across this city, what would that cost be? We have never faced that. You're talking millions and millions in savings to taxpayers. And I bet if you went door to door and asked the TCD residents, are they grateful for volunteer fire service? You bet they are. Just like the people in the CCD are grateful for our paid service. The two complement each other, and they give us a strong system to work together. I'm really surprised at the level of angst about this. Your point is well taken, sir, but not at the level that has been pushed around this room tonight. These are volunteers. I watched them fight side by side with our paid down on Roth Street last month, or the beginning of the month. Time passes around here. They took the same risks, side by side. I don't know. I think a lot of your comments are insulting, completely insulting to the volunteers and to firefighters in general. That's all I got. If there are no other comments, roll, please.
Alderman DeLucia?
No?
Alderman Miles?
No.
Alderman Wilson?
No.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Nash?
Yes.
President Pro Tem Betancourt?
No.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 3 yeses and 4 nos.
The ordinance fails on a motion of 3 in favor, 4 against.
Public hearings. Number 1, relative to holding a public hearing on the Neighborhood Assistance Act.
At this time, I declare this public hearing open, and I invite anyone who'd like to speak in favor of those proposed associations and organizations that are to be funded in this hearing at this time. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of this ordinance? Again, is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of this ordinance? Again, is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of this ordinance on the Neighborhood Assistance Act? If not, is there anyone here in opposition to this ordinance? Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Forgive me. Strike the word ordinance. Again, is there anyone else in opposition to the Neighborhood Assistance Act? Third and final time, is there anyone else here in opposition to the Neighborhood Assistance Act? Seeing no one, then I declare that hearing closed. Thank you.
Number 2, an ordinance amending Article 6 of Chapter 7 of the Code of Ordinances by establishing a non-lapsing account for unexpended educational funds and modifying existing financial management policies.
I would declare this public hearing to be open, and I will invite the first speaker signed up on this particular ordinance is Marvin Ceruto.
Marvin Ceruto, 100 Star Street, Norwich, Connecticut, the United States of America. And forgive me if I don't fully understand this. I read it as much as I possibly could. I used to interpret federal code for a nuclear power plant, and I couldn't understand this. I couldn't make heads or tails of it. So my perception is it's a method to get more money into the education department. And I'm going to be the broken record and try to figure out how a city of 40,000 people has an $84 million education budget. Let me give you some physical data. 1 million single-dollar bills is 30 stories high. $84 million would be 2,500 stories high. Airplanes would run into it. There needs to be a discussion on this, because for $84 million, we should have Yale and Harvard here together teaching our kids. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Superintendent Kristen Stringfellow, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Nystrom, City Council members, City Manager. I'm Kristen Stringfellow, Superintendent of Schools in Norwich, and I am here this evening to advocate for the Council's support on the resolution of the non-lapsing fund. I'm also advocating that it be supported as drafted by the City Solicitor, which includes the verbiage offset general fund operating deficiencies, which would contemplate unforeseen expenses in capital projects, special education, and emergencies such as staffing expenses for hurricanes, blizzards, natural disasters, and other unbudgeted, unforeseen expenses. As a reminder, this would not be new money coming into the school department. It would be a place for us to establish any surplus that we ended the year with in an attempt to offset decades of capital concerns and some or unforeseen expenses, and you hold the power to be able to determine if a project is worthy of that consideration. And so thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this? Oh, you made it. Come on. Yes, Heather. I'm on the list. Yes, you are. You just got here, I think.
Heather Romansky, 297 Scotland Road, Chair, Norwich Board of Education, and member of the Board of Ed City Council Ad Hoc Committee. So I'm here tonight to speak in support of the creation of the non-lapsing account for unexpended funds. The creation of this account was unanimously supported by the Ad Hoc Committee after a lot of thoughtful consideration and conversation. I'm appreciative to the members of the committee for that dialogue. It was a good year for that committee, and this is one of the excellent things that came out of it. I have a lot of the same things to say, I'm sorry. So the creation of the account was unanimously supported by the Ad Hoc Committee and would allow the Board of Ed to offset some of those general fund operating deficits. This, to repeat again, is not additional funding to the Board of Education. This is money that was already allocated to the board. In the past, there have been instances when the board has not or has overspent or not finished under budget and has had to rely on the undesignated fund balance managed by the city. And we are working very hard to not have that happen going forward. This would allow us to address some unanticipated costs that are difficult to forecast for example, an influx of homeless students or an increase mid-year to our special education population. I think it's important to note that the fund is governed by specific rules and is not without oversight. I respectfully ask you to support us in this endeavor. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to the ordinance that's before us in favor? Would anyone else like to speak in favor of the ordinance that is before us? Would anyone else like to speak in favor of the ordinance that is before us? Seeing no one further in favor, is anyone here in opposition to this ordinance? Is anyone else in opposition to this ordinance? Is anyone here like to speak in opposition to this ordinance? Seeing no one else, I then declare this hearing closed, and thank you.
Number 3, an ordinance to establish a position of Director of the Fire Service to be codified as Section 8-12 of Chapter 8 of the Norwich Code of Ordinances, and to set responsibilities and requirements with respect to this position.
I declare this public hearing to be open and would request anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this ordinance to do so at this time. Again, is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of ordinance number 3? Again, is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this ordinance number 3 on the fire service? Seeing no one, then I would ask, is there anyone here to speak in opposition to this ordinance? Sir, please state your name and address for the record.
Marvin Cerruto, 100 Star Street, Norwich, Connecticut, United States of America. It wasn't too long ago that we had 3 battalion chiefs, and we were going to stick with 3 battalion chiefs. And a councilman who is not here with us any longer argued that we had to have a 4th battalion chief. And it kind of went against the grain of what was logical and common for our city, our size, and our department, but he imparted a lot of emotion on it, talking about being in bed in a burning building and needing that 4th battalion chief. So now we're going to have a director. It's a 6-figure job. I know we had a study done, so we're following a study, but I just don't see it. Here once again, we're a city of 40,000. I haven't heard anybody talk in favor of this. I haven't heard anybody say that, we're hurting. I used to do firefighting strategies at a nuclear power plant. I was very much involved with it. And we got 4 bat chiefs and a department chief. I just don't see why we need a director. Prove me wrong.
Thank you. Is there anyone else like to speak against ordinance number 3? Again, is there anyone else here would like to speak against? Yes, sir, I'm sorry, I can see your hand. Please state your name and address.
John Blackburn, 15 Alice Street. I feel we don't need this. For one thing, the fire chief's salary for the paid fire department, that is worked out where it's spread throughout the whole town among some other salaries. I feel he has the responsibility, he can handle it. And the volunteers work very well with the CCD right now. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else like to speak against ordinance number 3 at this time? Third and final time, is there anyone else like to speak in opposition to ordinance number 3 at this time? Seeing no one else, I then declare that hearing closed, and thank you.
Second reading and action. Number 2, an ordinance amending Article 6 of Chapter 7 of the Code of Ordinances by establishing a non-lapsing account for unexpended educational funds and modifying existing financial management policies.
Thank you. Could I have a motion, please, to bring this to the floor? Alderman Wilson, is there a second? Alderman Ella Miles. Is there discussion? Alderman DeLucia.
As we heard Board Chair Romansky talk, as a result of the increased collaboration between the City Council and the Board of Ed through the ad hoc committee that we fought very hard for, we've arrived at this point where the Board of Ed and the superintendent schools can be encouraged to be as fiscally prudent as possible without fear that they will be punished for it. And I air quote punished because as things currently stand, if they were to have a surplus, it comes back to the city. And if they were to have a large enough surplus beyond what the parameters of this ordinance are, well, then that money would come back to the city. But at least we are establishing a mechanism so that when the board does have a surplus, as we heard the superintendent say, it can be set aside for capital projects that have long been deferred. It can be set aside in case there is a unexpected cost overrun in the following fiscal year. And it's not just handing a barrel of cash over to the Board of Ed. The City Council has input, has say, has a vote as a body. I think that this was or is a great idea. I think that it helps us to be more flexible and more responsive to education costs and to the needs of the taxpayers at the same time. And I fully support this ordinance.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Alderman Wilson, please.
So I will say I also support the non-lapsing account or fund. Again, as Alderman DeLucia says, it allows them to take care of necessary projects. So we look at some of the things we've had to bond for over the last several years, boilers, roofs. I even consider the Munis conversion were not small amounts of money. And I think the part that for me that is exciting is it's another system being put in place for us working together. So, as I said last meeting, we've got the ad hoc committee, which is kind of right now that communication between the Board of Ed and the City Council, which they discussed this before it came before us. And I think this is just another tool. So although it still has to be approved by individuals on this council, whoever sits up here, we have the system of the ad hoc committee, which was formed to make sure that the Board of Ed is within their budget and that things are going okay during the year, but also to identify areas to keep a look at. So I think giving them the opportunity to have this fund is also a good, in a sense, like a year like this where they had additional funds because of COVID monies and whatnot that they received, that some of the additional expenses that they had because students were remote and other things, they have a surplus. So I think one of the things, and if you paid attention to the Board of Ed's last meeting, their business manager explained that this is not going to be an every year thing, that they have a huge surplus. As they go back to normal costs, increases in tuition, more kids coming back to school in the fall, they're going to realize the actual cost of things. But the other thing that this fund does is if they did have a run over or they had additional money from some grants or different things that they received throughout the year, they've got a place to put it towards the use of education. There are a lot of, if you look at their budget, there are a lot of areas of grants and different things out there. And this allows, if they do not get to those expenses during the year, they have a place to put it. But also this sets up, even though we are going through the process of running a school building facilities committee, this puts a system in place for years down the road as even that happens for any emergency when it comes to staffing and different things, because I will say over the last 10 years, we have seen emergencies such as in this last year where additional staff may have had to be hired in order to take care of the needs of our students. So there's a system in place. I fully support this fund, and it's not like they can come and just spend the money. There's a system where it must go through us. So there is a vetting process. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Alderwoman Gould.
I'm going to put Josh on the spot for a minute, please. And you may or may not know this, but I don't believe that grant funds can go into this unrestricted or undesignated fund balance. I believe if grant funds are not expended, they must be returned to whoever provided the grant.
Right, this is just in the general fund, so just the amount allocated to the Norwich Public Schools through the budget process in the general fund.
So the $84
Right.
million.
So if they have it appropriated $84 million,
and they only spend 83, they get $1 million.
Ask for $1 million to go into this fund. Their Board of Education has to approve it, then it goes to you for your approval.
Thank you for that clarification.
Welcome.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on the ordinance? Josh, I hate to ask you, but please come back.
Okay.
Section 7-131.4, replenishment of unassigned fund balance. Just for members of the general public, could you give your own explanation of sections A and B so that it's on the record?
Sure. So if, under this policy document, if the balance in the unassigned fund balance goes below 8%, then this policy says that the city will restore it to 8% within 2 years, 8% being approximately 1 month of expenditures. So it's important to maintain our cash flows and have it at that minimum level. And Part B says that if the unassigned fund balance falls between 8% and 12%, then the city will restore the balance up to the 12% level within 5 budget cycles.
And where are we now?
We are at 11.7%.
Okay, thank you. People realize there's more than one issue here. Speaking, thank you very much.
Yep, stay there.
Oh, okay. First, I want to say that, one, after this was raised for public hearing at the first reading, I went and met with the superintendent and Mr. Soprensky as well, and we discussed this for about an hour. And they aligned my concerns, so I will be supporting that as well as the rest of the ordinance. Thank you. Alderman Betancourt.
Yeah, just to be clear, so your last forecast was an additional, I think, 1.1 going into the fund balance this fiscal year, assuming everything holds true to form?
Yes.
What would that put us up to?
11.7.
That
yeah.
would put us to the
Yeah.
11.7? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good. I wasn't sure on that. All right, I'm good then. That's as far as you're concerned anyway.
All right. I can stick around.
Okay.
I'd like to see you just running back and forth.
So I'm going to agree here and support this, and because I really basically believe it's fiscally prudent to be able, for the Board of Ed to be able to deal with their emergencies without having to come running to the city and us increasing our bonding indebtedness for various projects like we had to do for Stanton School this year. So I certainly, so I support this. I would rather them be able to put some money in the bank as much as the city does. The city does essentially the same thing. We do have a fund balance, an undesignated fund balance. It would be a similar situation for the Board of Ed. And I think in their case, the limitations both on the amount that would go in there and the fact that the council ultimately would have to approve the amount that goes in there, I think, make me comfortable enough that we could make this work. So I want to give them that opportunity to do that. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderman DeLucia?
Yes.
Alderwoman Miles?
Yes.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Nash?
Yes.
President Pro Tem Bettencourt?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
7-0.
Motion passes 7-0.
Number 3, an ordinance to establish the position of Director of the Fire Service to be codified as Section 8-12 of the Charter, of Chapter 8 of the Norwich Code of Ordinances, and to set responsibilities and requirements with respect to the position.
Thank you. Is there a motion to bring this forward for discussion, please? Alderman DeLucia, is there a second? Alderwoman Ella Miles, is there discussion? Alderman DeLucia.
Thank you. We heard a lot of public comment on this on both sides of the issue. I would just say that despite the budget realities of the upcoming year, the creation of this position was and is central to improvements in the administrative side of the fire service. Now, during this time that the position is unfunded, the fire chiefs and the city manager have an opportunity to enact the recommendations in the fire study. And we can revisit the funding of this position at some other point in time. But now is the time to create the position, have it be defined, know that it's there if we need to fill it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Alderwoman Gould.
Well, for transparency and clarity and all that, and so we're going to slide this position in, and then pretty soon, we're going to slide in $150,000 or $200,000 for the position, and then we'll tell the taxpayers about it, right? That's what we're going to do. We're going to put this position on the books, but we have no money to fund it. It's a waste of time and just some sort of ploy that if the fire chiefs don't do what you like, be careful, this is the hammer over your head. if you're not doing what we told you to do or on the timeline we told you to do, we're micromanaging and disrespecting our city manager, Chief Montoya, Chief Westervelt, Chief Milton, Chief Ivers, Chief Egart. Who am I missing? Chief Milton.
Spalding.
Jenks.
Chief Jenks. We're disrespecting all of them. This is the hammer or the javelin we're going to throw at them. Right? There should be no public hearing. We don't have the money to fund the position. It goes away. But this will be the hanging over your head, Chief Montoya, I'm sorry to say. I will not be supporting this. Not whatsoever. Going to be no, never. I have too much respect for our chiefs and our city manager to do this job without having a babysitter at a cost of $200,000 because let's remember, salary, benefits. Isn't he going to need a secretary? Or is the city manager's secretary supposed to do double duty? Where's his office? Where's his office supplies? Let's keep adding that on because that's more than $2 or $3 for the taxpayer. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Alderman DeLucia.
Thank you.
Second time, please.
Yes. I would just merely say that I resent the implication that, again, we are disingenuous, we are not transparent, that we hold hammers over people's heads and throw javelins and threaten and cajole and twist arms. That might be the way that you see the world. It is not the way that I see the world. It is not the way that I see my responsibility on the council and as the chair of the Public Safety Committee. That is not how I behave. That is not how I have conducted myself. And I defy you to show me one example where I have. So I would just say you should temper your comments because they are unprofessional. This is about accountability. And this wasn't Joe DeLucia's idea. This came from a group of professionals that study fire services as a business. And this was their recommendation to rectify the issues at hand. We don't have to get into the history, the George Paul study in 35 years, and some of the more passionate comments that we heard at Public Safety and then on the floor of this council. I would just say that it comes down to one thing: improve the delivery of service to the people who need it when they need it, and to hold a person accountable for improving that service delivery. Because in spite of all of the glowing accolades that we heard about the Roth Street fire, which was a bear, and everybody conducted themselves and acted honorably and bravely and put their own lives at risk when they thought that there were still people in those buildings or in those houses. No argument. But that needs to be the norm, and you are not being honest with yourself and with this council and this community if you say that that is the norm in the city. Because if that fire was not on Roth Street and was elsewhere outside of the CCD, you would have not seen the level of cooperation that we saw that day. And that is a fact. And we all know it. It's the dirty little secret that nobody wants to say out loud. Well, there it is. Joe DeLucia just said it. Print it in the paper because it's the truth. And it's about time we start talking and saying the truth about what's going on in a fire service in this city.
Thank you, I think. Any other comments? Alderman Bettencourt, was that your hand?
Yeah,
Oh,
it was
okay.
my hand.
Pen.
I'm gonna go backwards on this a little bit because to me, it's really just about a administrative function. I'm more concerned personally with the HR aspects in the fire service, discrimination aspects in the fire service that have occurred in other communities. And also, of course, as Alderman DeLucia mentioned, the delivery of service in the most efficient and expeditious manner possible. So I think the position could help with that. But right now, the position isn't funded, and it's not going to be funded this year. There's no way that happens. We would, and any funding for the position would have to be part of the budget. We'd have to have that discussion. There's going to be public hearings and all that. So I think there's something to be said for the hammer aspect in the sense that this is, we'll be sitting out there. And I don't know if hammer is a good word, but certainly some incentive. I want the system to work. I want whatever happens as far as with the chiefs and the city manager, I want it to work. But there's a long history here of it not working. That's the truth. So there are things that need to change. We're not the ones to make those changes. So, but those changes need to happen, and it should be, I think they were pointed out in the study by people that know a lot more about the fire service than I do. So, and I'm going to support this, but it's certainly, I mean, there's no real impact right now, either to funding or anything else, because it isn't in the budget, and we haven't funded the position, nor will we be funding the position right now. But but down the road, who knows? If there's a need, though, we have to be prepared. So it certainly gives us a place to start. So, thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Nash.
I've sat up here for a while, and as the time dwindles down, I reflect a lot more on the service I provided for the city as a councilman. And my first year sitting on public safety was quite an eye-opener in the fact that there was, I don't want to insult anybody, but there was a lot of problems there. And you can say what you want, again, and I'll reiterate what I said before. It's not the fighting fires. That's never been the problem. They fight them like Avengers. I mean, they're amazing. It's not that. But after a chance, I got to review this, and again, I'm glad we haven't the funds to fund this at this time, because I think we can review this and massage it like I had said at the public safety thing. I think this is a position that can be massaged, and I think it's a position where we can get a lot more out of it than what we're thinking about for a lot less. And I did send some emails out, some stuff I looked on, and I sent to the city manager. When I first got elected, we had an assistant city manager that, for whatever the reason was, we defunded that position in a way that person went. And I don't want to say I witnessed the former city manager struggle a bit, but he seemed like there was a lot more to do for him without the assistant. Now, the present person we have is the executive assistant to the city manager. It's an amazing job, but I really like to see us do is reevaluate the commissioner's position and reconsider possibly an assistant city manager. Now, with an assistant city manager, I've done the demographics because I'm not as nearly as qualified as Josh or the city manager to do anything financially, but I did notice that cities our size, 40 to 45,000 to 50,000, normally have a city manager assist the manager. Now, when I say this, it's managers that do not have strong mayoral positions. And when I say strong mayoral, some cities have mayors that are as qualified as a city manager as a city manager. And those cities don't normally have a city manager. They have the mayor. Our mayor is a little different structured than most cities. So we could literally hire an assistant city manager in the pay range of 78 to 85,000. That's before benefits. As far as office space goes, listen, this is the city hall. There's plenty of space. For Christ's sake, we had a botanical garden place with an office, and they're not even a city agency. So office space isn't the issue. We could get an office space for the person. So there's other things. But anyway, that's the medium income. Now, with an assistant city manager, you can assign whatever duties the city manager wishes to assign that person, such as public safety departments, like the fire, police, code enforcement, emergency management. They can oversee that stuff. And again, I'm going to tell you my vision, and I've been sitting here for a while, and for the last 9 years, I've been trying to get an oversight committee for the fire departments. Not to manage them like everyone wants to say, we micromanage. That's not the case. What I want is someone to facilitate, coordinate, be the point person for that. 5 chiefs, 7 chiefs, 6 chiefs, 9 chiefs, 1 chief and 4 battalion chiefs. That's not what we need. We need a person that can gather all that information, facilitate the discussions, report back to the city manager, and give that stuff to the city manager. And also, on another side note, when there's not a lot of fire and emergency management for this individual to do, city manager can offer them other assignments as he needs to get things off his plate so that he can concentrate on some things. I think a city of Norwich is large. It has great complexities that other cities our size don't have. And I think the city manager could use an assistant. He didn't come to me with this idea. I started massaging what the public safety department had done, thought of how we could save some money, thought how we could get bigger bang for our buck for the taxpayers. And in closing, I just want to say something. We do listen to our constituents. It's just not the 4, 5, 6, or 7 that show up to city council meetings. I listen to you. I pay attention. I take copious notes. I make phone calls. But it's just not the 5 or 6 people that show up to city council that we need to listen to. It's the emails, it's the conversations at the Stop and Shop, the gas station, the events in the city. It's not just those people that come here. And I respect you and I value your opinion because you do take the time to come here. But when I spend 45 minutes in the aisle of a Stop and Shop discussing a commissioner of fire department, or get accosted by several citizens over an irrigation system at a baseball field, a football field, don't tell me we're not listening to you, because we are. And as far as transparency goes, I'm not sure what more you want. You want to show up at our caucuses? I mean, that's the only part that's not out in the public. Everything we do in front of you. Every discussion, every argument, everything we vote on is all done in front of you. From me, Bill Nash, 12 years on the council, I have done nothing behind closed doors, behind your back. I've done everything in front of you. This is something I think the city needs. I think we could better off with a assistant city manager than maybe this position at this point. Either way, we don't have the money for it anyway, but I do kind of agree. We've been running around with carrots for 12 years. We took out a stick and everything started to fall together. And I don't want to act like that. I just don't know what else to do. I've sat here for 12 years and I've seen nothing go forward. And now we have a chance. Oh, no, I'm done. We have a chance of getting some
Excuse
stuff
me,
forward.
but we are supposed to adhere to 5-minute rule.
I'm done, sorry.
No, thank you.
I'm done.
Appreciate all you said,
Yeah.
but I was reminded. Thank
I
you.
got you.
Is there further, yes, Alderman Wilson, I don't think you've spoken on this matter yet?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
So I will say, we sit here, and part of the things we continue to talk about week in and week out is accountability, setting up systems for success. We've done that over the last year or so. And I think the bigger picture here is there is still time, man. You know, I think part of the elephant in the room is about cost. And I will say, like Alderman Betancourt has said, as Alderman Nash has said, as Alderman DeLucia has said, it's not being funded this year. We don't have the money for it. We're not going to slip it in there to fund it. It's not being funded. However, that still allows us time to have the conversation of, is that the right salary and all of those other things. The other part is the argument about staffing. Let's be realistic. One of the goals is we are working together within the city. And I use the example of the tax office and the city clerk's office sharing an individual, although it pains and it's tough for their departments at certain times of the year, they're making it work with what they have. So I think part of it is when you look at this position or any position, is the city manager is going to do his best job to make sure that we're not adding any additional individuals. Going to use what we have to make it work. I think that's one of the things that we've been trying to do our best at. But I think when it comes to this position, I think we all know it's not being funded, so the fire chiefs have an opportunity to make progress on some of those recommendations. They have a chance to make progress on working together, setting up a plan. However, I think one of the things that we're, as Alderman Nash has said, this is planning for what's next. If this doesn't work, we shouldn't be having the same conversation again at this point next year. So we've been having this conversation since the study was revealed back in February, and everybody's been opposed since then. And although, I think I will say Alderman Nash, Assistant City Manager talking about that. I think, we're sitting here and we're looking at what's best for those needing the service. And quite frankly, those discussions can happen as to how, if there are other changes needed to the position. But I think looking at this is the bigger picture of some of those bigger pieces that need to be taken care of. We're not talking about fighting fires. We're talking about the administrative functions, okay? And I think that's what the focal point here has to be, is we're not telling people that they are horrible or anything at fighting fires or anything. What we're talking about is we're doing what's best to bring efficiency to the city. And let's be honest. The fire service isn't the first department or area to go under scrutiny over a study or things going on. Board of Education goes through it every single time when over the last decade, when they overspend or they do this, you're hiring this individual, or you're doing this wrong, or why are their test scores here and we're spending this amount of money. I think we have to look at this, and this is another set of accountability goals and standards. And what this position does is it allows the chiefs, they've got a year, they got a whole fiscal year to make progress and show us that they can do what they have to do. And we may not have to ever touch this position. But I think we've been at this conversation for several months because we're looking at if this doesn't work, if we're back at this square again come budget time, no progress has been made, why start the process over of going through public hearings, going through the ordinance process, putting on an agenda? It's there. We've been going through this conversation. Things may be changed. We've got ordinances on the books that we always change as things change around us. So this is putting something in place. And if we don't have to use it, we don't. But it's time for us to start planning for the future if this doesn't work. As Alderman Nash has said, it's been a while and we haven't made the progress we've needed. So this is where we are. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comment? Alderman Gould?
So we've heard, this is for administrative. And then I hear about the delivery of service. And I hear about accountability. So I specifically, if anybody remembers, I asked the consultant from McGrath Group, please give me an example of where a fire commissioner, supervisor, whatever you want to call this person, has worked in a city like Norwich, Connecticut. And Mr. McGrath's response to me was, I'll get it to you. I'm still waiting. See, they didn't know what to do with Norwich, Connecticut. So they said, oh, geez, I don't know what to do. They've got a lot of volunteers. They got a great career department. I don't know what to do. Let's give them get a fire commissioner, and he'll figure it out. You know what? The boys in the fire service quibble like brothers, sisters. Okay? And then the next day, we're back at the job again. So I don't know what this delivery of service means. If someone could explain to me what the problem is with the delivery of service, and I don't know what the little innuendo was that if the fire wasn't at Ross Street, fill in the blank, what does that mean? What does that mean? That if the career department wasn't there and it was on West Main Street, that it would have gone to hell in a handbasket? That's insulting to every volunteer in the city of Norwich. And the poll study, I'm sorry, what didn't happen 40 years ago, that water is under the dam. That water's, the horse is out of the barn. I can't go back 40 years. But it's absolutely insulting that you would suggest that if a fire in the magnitude of Ross Street was in somewhere else in this city, that something would have happened bad. I'm disgusted. And this is a hammer. This is an absolute hammer. You've said it yourselves. If you don't do what we want, we're going to fill this position. You have no respect for our city manager and our chiefs. I'm done.
Thank you. Is there further comment? Yes, Alderwoman Ella Miles.
I'm just curious to know if anyone actually bothered to read any of the bullet points, because I'm going through this and I'm seeing in conjunction with, promote, serve, in collaboration with, coordinate, assist. And I would like to know who feels as though there's a hammer over their head with someone coordinating and writing grants for the procurement of personnel, apparatus, emergency funding, and other resources the department may need. I would honestly like to know who feels threatened by someone getting more money into the departments. So that is my question. Who actually took the time to read what this position does? It is to assist the chiefs, not throw javelins at them, not knock them in the head with a hammer, not take over how they're running their firehouses, but to help coordinate the services. That's what I'm reading through this, to help them make sure that their policies and procedures are in line so that no one gets sued over a discrimination lawsuit, or to make sure that everyone has gone through all the same kind of training. This position, it's designed to help everyone work together as a cohesive unit for the citizens of Norwich. But at the end of the day, there's no money in the budget to fund it anyway. So I honestly, for the life of me, don't understand the level of arguing and yelling that's going on up here over something that's not being funded. I don't get it. But, you know, I don't foresee this as a threat to anyone or anyone's position. It is to help coordinate. It is to help some of the administrative functions. We cannot expect the city manager to take on this entire role in addition to everything else he does. It's, you know, I do agree with Alderman Nash that there's another level of assistance and help that's needed. And that's all that this does. That's my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Alderman Bettencourt.
Yeah, I'm excellent. I'm going to compliment Alderwoman Miles because I think her comments are very well made. Because I mean, if you actually read the ordinance, you know, I kind of agree with that. I think the position is almost misnamed, and that it's more of a coordinator position than anything else. And I know we've had that discussion about what we're going to call it, but I will note that if you read the day, that they just had an article recently about East Lyme having actually taking a look at this same kind of scenario, and they certainly have with a fire services director where they have a lot fewer fire departments than we do. So obviously, it's somewhat of a smaller community. But also, and because they have, some similar issues that we do. I will say that Alderman Nash's thoughts, I think, are excellent because I think I would like to get the most out of a position. But for right now, we're kind of looking at this one thing, and but I think it's honestly something we could come back and revisit and take a look and do something along the lines that he suggests, because I honestly think it's a pretty good idea. So I'd want to consider that down the road. But for the moment, since the position's not being funded at this point anyway, I think we use this as a jumping off point and see what happens down the road, that's all.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? I will try to be brief then. I actually have some questions about some of the language, so I'd like to ask our Alderman DeLucia to provide answers. If you go to section 18 and 19, the word discipline is used. The supervisor, or whatever we're calling this position, if and when it's filled, does this individual decide what discipline is in each of these fire departments, paid and volunteer?
No. It's, again, I did not write the job description or any of these bullet points, but it was always our intention, and we communicated this clearly to the city manager and the corporation council, that this person would make recommendations to the city manager, who is ultimately the CEO, and takes whatever corrective action is deemed reasonable and necessary.
Thank you. Does that discipline include if that person disagrees with the findings of, for example, our paid chief who's here tonight, Chief Montoya, and he goes to the city manager and asks for discipline of the fire chief? Is that permitted? Because he disagreed with how that chief dealt with his own charge.
I don't understand. In what context? They disagreed, what? They disagreed, like they decided to paint a fire truck black?
I'm speaking more to the conduct of an officer or firefighter. If the supervisor felt it was not proper, or didn't follow the state codes and all that kind of stuff, and yet the chief of the department itself did not find the same reasoning, who would prevail? Would there still be discipline of that individual?
No, that would, again, would be the city manager. I would imagine if, again, that's how deep into the weeds do you want to get into this hypothetical? I would imagine that if there was a violation of NFPA, standard practices, safe operations, OSHA regulations, that again, though the chief of the Norwich Fire Department and this person would state their finding, their case to the city manager, who would ultimately be the person who decides what, if any, action is taken.
Thank you. I thought the contract provided for that description. A contract that we're voting on tonight, for example. Are you aware of anything in the contract we're being asked to ratify tonight? Please, sir, put your hand down. I'm speaking. That's rude.
I was actually going to ask for a point of clarification for you to answer the question that you asked him.
Well, then I'll call on you when I'm done. I'll be happy to.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We're being asked to ratify a contract later, and I really wonder if what we're setting in place here at some point in time is going to be in conflict with the rights of the bargaining unit. That's what I'm getting at. Can you answer that question?
Again, not being a labor law specialist, but having to take corrective action in a paramilitary operation, I would say that the fire chief, per the charter, is the chief of the fire service in the city of Norwich. And so he, again, would deal with his subordinates. However, I would expect the city manager to have input and prior knowledge of whatever actions were going to be taken. And again, following the collective bargaining agreement to the extent that it addresses disciplinary issues.
Thank you. If you're relying back on the city manager, then why do we need this new position to answer that need?
Well, you're asking about discipline. You're asking about settling disagreements and who's ultimately going to have the final say. What this position is talking about is running the administrative side of the fire service so that we can employ economies of scale in our purchasing, and that we can have commonality in our equipment, in our apparatus, and in our training. And that, again, in working in concert with the city manager and, as you called out, number 18, with the Director of Human Resources on candidate selection, recruitment, promotion, policies for record keeping and reporting. And let's say, because it was already been referenced, other local towns have dealt with sexual harassment and just harassment in the workplace issues. All of those things, again, collaborate, as Alderwoman Miles said, right? Collaborating with, in concert with. So not, again, a super chief that has final say on all matters, regardless of what the paid fire chief might say, or what the individual volunteer chiefs might say, or what the city manager might say, or what the what corporation council says that the charter says, or that the law says. Again, this is not a person who's going to operate in a vacuum with complete autocratic authority.
Thank you.
And to answer your question directly, we heard very passionate and somewhat compelling comment at the last public safety meeting. You were there. And at the same time, the people who spoke in opposition, minus one person, the people who spoke in opposition said that they shouldn't have to take direction from someone who doesn't know anything about firefighting, meaning the city manager, but they should be allowed to work with the city manager instead of having a professional with firefighting experience and leadership experience in order to help them accomplish these things that were recommended in the study. You can't argue both sides of an argument. So you know what that said to me, Mr. Mayor, was that they want no oversight. That the fire service, as I won't even dice them up, the fire service in general wants no oversight. That is unacceptable to me.
Thank you. For the record, items in 18 already take place. All departments coordinate with the Human Resource Office when it comes to hiring. It's already done. Not in the volunteers. Again, they're not paid. No salary, no insurance. So I'd like to know what the norms are going to be. What are the protocols that are going to be followed? These people aren't being paid. They're not being hired per se.
There's still
How can you,
departments of the
how do
state
you
are
expect
still
that?
Departments of the city.
No one's questioning that. I'm not. I'm questioning the rush to judgment. I questioned the study itself. I know for a fact that when the study was first submitted for review by the city manager, there wasn't even a discussion of reviewing the paid services. It was only volunteers. It was the city manager that asked you to add Section 6. That's an historical note, but it brings you back to of why this study came about and why we're taking this action. The chiefs have asked for time. Our fire chief, who's here with us tonight, gave his opinion on this during his monthly report. That's how much he thought it was important. He stood up there and said, we deserve an opportunity to show that we can do this. Passing this ordinance tonight says to me, you don't believe they deserve that opportunity. And yet again, you need a reality check. It's not the same chiefs. It's not the chiefs that were the problem. They retired. They're gone. We have 3 new people in 6 positions. And our paid chief, after he was made chief, went on active duty for 19 months. He wasn't even here to establish himself. I think it's the highest insult to him of all.
Well, that's
not a question, sir.
That is an emotional.
Sir, I'm not asking a question or a response.
That is not a factual comment. So I would say.
Sir, I didn't ask for your response. I was still speaking. Thank you. We heard people squabbling over $2 and $3 increases for a year's charge, probably an hour and a half ago by now. And yet you're committing the taxpayers of Norwich to over $250,000 increase when and if this position is filled, because that's where the numbers will fall. The hypocrisy that I see here on dollars is just enormous. $2 and $3 increase, previously you fought against and defeated, and here you're willing to commit to taxpayers in Norwich another $250,000 increase. There goes your tax cut. Remember we lowered the mill rate 0.08 mils? Not much to be happy about. Well, you just wipe that out with this commitment if you pass it. We need some consistency here tonight. If you care about taxpayers, it should be through any policy decision, not the ones you pick and choose. Thank you. And by the way, I'll be voting no. Alderman Wilson, you do have the floor.
So I will say first, I want to go back to your comment about 18 and 19. I think it specifically spells it out as Alderwoman Miles explains. It says coordinating with the Department of Human Resources and the fire chiefs concerning recruitment, promotion, discipline, and personnel practices. So if we think about this, and I think we've all worked at a job or a business or anything, we understand that one of the things that was explained in the study was that each department had their own different manual, handbook, and this, kind of getting to your point about discipline, puts a streamline on how discipline is carried out across the board. Every department is going to discipline the same. It allows all the chiefs to sit up and coordinate with human resources, the city manager, this individual, what those policies would look like. Because quite frankly, they're not all the same. So I think part of it is, to answer that question, is it puts a system in place on what that looks like. So we're not penalizing one department different than another. I think that answered that question. And to go to the part about a contractual, it doesn't change that, because we have that system to also use when making set standard policies on discipline and other areas of promotion and whatnot. So it's not saying that, oh, we're scrapping what we're doing and we're starting over. No, we've got certain things, and quite frankly, within the contract, some of those things, that language can be used across the board. So we've got systems of discipline in place in the city. It allows us a parity across the board that every department is going to do the same thing when it comes to those areas. The second piece is to sit up here and say that, and to continue to refer to dollars, that we're not talking about dollars right now. That's a conversation whenever it happens beyond this. That, what we keep referring to, it's this $140,000 amount and it's going to be X, Y. We're coming back to that long down the road. The chiefs are going to get their opportunity because it's not funded to do what they have to do to make things work. However, for us to sit up here and to continue to refer back to this discussion about just the dollar amount, this ordinance doesn't say, you know what, this individual needs to be paid $105,000, or this individual needs to be paid $140,000. That's a conversation of each of us up here on the council. If it had been in the budget, each and every one of us would have had the opportunity to change that salary. And then we would have just been hoping that we got individuals to apply within that salary range. So to talk about dollars and cents from a salary standpoint is beyond this point. I think, as Alderwoman Miles has stated, it gives us clear understanding of a lot of this is coordination of where we look alike. So when you asked Alderman DeLucia the question about discipline and chiefs disagreeing, well, this individual is going to help set up what that looks like. What does the incident or the incident protocol look like when two chiefs disagree? Who's a part of that system to make sure things are parallel to one another? It's not putting one over the other. It's putting a system that makes everybody work. That's what we do within businesses. That's what you do within other careers. You look at how we can make things work so that no one is feeling left out, one, but also that one doesn't feel like their punishment or their protocols are at a different level than the others because someone else supersedes the other person. So this is going to put things at where they need to be so that everybody's just on the same page. And it goes back to the point, beyond just even this, we talk about, and I believe anybody that gets city dollars should be playing by city rules. Point blank. City rules when it comes to sexual harassment trainings and discrimination trainings, and we should all be playing by the same rules because at the end of the day, that's what we're asking each and every city employee to do. And I'm sorry, but as a taxpayer and as an individual, it's got to be the same across the board. So we can't ask certain individuals to do something and not others. It's got to be the same. And I think that's what this is telling you. In 18 and 19, they're going to coordinate with our Director of Human Resources, the city manager, or whoever else he designates, all the chiefs. What is it going to look like so that everybody's policies on operating for promotions, recruitment, and even just day-to-day personnel is the same so that when we have an issue, we know how to handle it. One is not different than the other. That plain and simple. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Is there further comment? Yes, Alderman Gould.
Okay. So I just want to remind you that...
Excuse me, is there objection to the Alderman speaking for a third time?
Yes, there is. Because I've sat here quietly only answering your questions, and you actually shut me down.
I didn't ask a question when you were asked to stop talking. You interrupted my statement. There's a difference.
Say something worth listening to.
Excuse me? There's no reason to be disrespectful to the mayor,
You're
Alderman
right.
DeLucia.
You're right, but I still object to a third time.
Well, person is asked to leave to speak for a third time. An objection has been raised. It is to the members of the council to whether or not to allow that or not. What say you?
No.
Please.
No, I think we've beat this horse to death.
No, sir.
Alderman Gould?
Well,
I know. but-
yes, I would like to speak again.
Thank you. Alderman Nash?
Yes.
Alderman Bentcourt?
No, and I think we should just call a vote at this point.
I say yes. The objection carries. Person may not speak for the third time. I will speak for the second and final time. This issue typifies what the study was intended for, as far as I'm concerned. This issue tonight, I think, insults paid and volunteer across the city. It insults their chiefs. It insults our city manager. And it also insults the taxpayers, because you're committing to them another $250,000 in taxes to be paid at some point in history. And I'm not surprised at that at all. Thank you. Again, I will be voting no. Call the roll, please.
Alderman DeLucia?
Before we vote, there's a blank that needs to be filled in the very end of the ordinance.
If you fill that in, you're going to have to amend it. If you don't fill it in, if it's approved and you have not filled that in, it becomes effective 10 days after publication. If you put a date in that it becomes effective, you're amending the document tonight.
You have to go back.
You'll have to bring it back to the council at the next meeting or thereabouts to approve the ordinance as amended.
So we leave it blank. Okay.
No. Never mind. Call the roll, please.
Alderman DeLucia?
Yes.
Alderwoman Miles?
Yes.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
No.
Alderman Nash?
Yes.
Alderman Bettencourt?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
No.
That's 5-2.
Motion passes 5-2.
City Manager's report.
Thank you. This is the city manager's report for June 21st, 2021. Meetings attended including state representatives and legislators, Southeastern Council of Governments, Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, Board of Directors meeting and Legislative Committee, Connecticut Interlocal Risk Management Agency investment meeting, NPU City Coordination meeting, NCDC Board meeting, and fire chiefs. I also had the pleasure to be attending the 32nd Juneteenth commemoration celebration that was held on June 18th, and which included the raising of the Juneteenth flag in front of City Hall. City staff and I met with the city's bond counsel, financial and investment advisors, and actuaries regarding an analysis of the city's pension funding obligation. A public informational presentation on pension obligation bonds will be held on June 29th in council chambers at 4 p.m. for a presentation to the council, the Personnel and Pension Board, Board of Education, and Norwich Public Utilities Board of Commissioners. I have been working diligently with city departments for their participation with the American Rescue Plan, ARP, for the $10.6 million in funding the city has received from the United States Treasury. My presentation will be held on July 6th council meeting. Norwich Public Works Department has completed replacement of sidewalks on the east side of Boswell Avenue from Oak Street to Roth Street, and an emergency repair to the large salt shed at the Public Works garage. The walls on the larger shed were deteriorated more than on the smaller shed. The city's paving contractor, Charles Pasteryak Jr., Inc., has completed Blueberry Hill, Watson and Dalewood Drives, Bondsider Lane, Mountain View Drive, Noelcrest Road, and Aspen Court in the first half of June. Justin Ziegler from the NYFS put together a great Pride Month virtual lunch and learn for city employees to learn the basics of LGBT terms, history, and how to be an ally. It was well received by who attended. NYFS has 120 youth enrolled in summer youth employment programs at 45 work sites this year. Norwich Recreation and NYFS hosted a meet and greet where they welcomed people to enjoy hot dogs cooked by the Norwich Police Department while they explained about all the fun and exciting opportunities for Norwich youth this summer. Spalding Pond will open on Thursday, June 24th. The lifeguards are trained and the beach is ready for visitors. Recreation Day Camp starts on June 28th. Please visit the city's website at norwichconnecticut.org for more information. Thank you to the Norwich Events Organization for keeping the annual fireworks celebration going. The event will be held on July 3rd with a rain date of July 5th. And that completes my report for this evening.
Thank you. I'm assuming it's just a typo omission, but LGBTQ, the Q's missing.
Plus.
Not a big, but.
My error.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the city manager? Alderman Wilson.
So my first question is, I remember last meeting, well, probably at this point, 2 meetings ago, an update as to the where we are for the funds for the small businesses, how many have received, kind of where we are with those funds, how much is left over, things of that sort.
This is for the bond, the downtown bond program?
No, this was the money
HUD funds. HUD funds.
The funds we use through Sector, and I believe it was the Community Development Office, I want to say, or the mayor's office, one of the two, to help small businesses and whatnot. We passed it, I want to say, probably back in March.
I don't have that answer yet for you. I apologize.
All right. Thank you for that part. Next, so I want to give a kudos to the city planning department and Public Works for the Greenville bump out project that they've been working on. A lot of the individuals in that Greenville neighborhood have been ecstatic about the project. It has brought this new life to Central Avenue. It's something that many residents continue to talk about each day. I want to give them kudos because they worked with any individual that came out and painted in the neighborhood. But
even me?
Including you. But even, with all of the young kids that came out to paint the white spots, I already told Pat, kudos for their patience working with individuals that may not be the greatest painter, but wanted to lift a hand. So I definitely want to give them their kudos for that project. I also want to congratulate all of the individuals that have graduated over the last 2 weeks. We've worked diligently to get to the point that we're at. I was able to attend several graduations, and it was exceptionally pleasing to be able to have the kids have an in-person graduation, knowing the circumstances that many of them have been in as far as the COVID restrictions around. And I believe many of them were ecstatic and thankful for each and every thing that we've done to make this school year possible for them. The other thing I want to say, I've been beyond proud of where Norwich is, recognizing culture. Over the last few weeks, we had the Cape Verdean flag raising and their mini festival right out here on the steps of City Hall. And then we had Juneteenth celebration this last Friday. And I want to thank the mayor for being at both, but also continuing to give the history that Norwich has been a leader when it comes to culture around the state of Connecticut. And then, the other big piece, and I believe the city manager has continued to push it, is knowing that summer is here, kids are out of school, them being safe. I want to give kudos to the rec department for being creative in their approach to getting more kids active and enrolled for summer camp by doing the meet and greet that they did last weekend. And I'm excited by all of the sites that they have for summer youth employment this year. It's just amazing to see the amount of kids that will be able to benefit. Those dollars come right back into our local economy. So it's just amazing to see. And I want to thank each and every business and site that has stepped up to give our young people the opportunity to see what it is in different career paths when it comes to work. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there further comment or questions to the city manager's report? I will report for perhaps the last time that the vaccine clinic will continue next Monday at the food distribution. As of right now, that is when Uncas Health will end it. We do not have approval yet for it to go through into July. However, and that is with all three vaccines, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, and Pfizer are available again next Monday, 9 to 12. The clinic is free. The food is free as well. We are serving 1,000 families each Monday morning. That will continue right through the end of August. August 31st, that Monday will be the last day that clinic continues. In fact, I should say that food distributions have continued on that site all the way back since Thanksgiving. And that is through the gracious help by the Mashantucket Nation. And I can't say thank you enough for what they have provided the city and the region as cars come from all over. But again, the food clinic goes through the end of August. As of right now, the vaccination clinic will end next Monday. And a brief reminder, the last memorial food distribution in memory of Jason Vincent is this Wednesday. Volunteers assemble at 3:30 at our Norwich Senior Center, and it kicks off at 4 o'clock. We're hoping to serve at least 400 families there. Thank you.
Citizen comment on resolutions.
I declare citizen comment on resolutions open. I do not have anyone that signed up ahead of time on that. If anyone would like to address the council on new business resolutions, now is the time. There are a total of 6 resolutions. Again, please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Brian Kobolars, 16 Hobart Avenue. Not going to make many friends tonight. Mainly talking about combination of 4 and 5. The direction that's being provided to the city manager regarding the need to conduct meetings with the various departments. Generally, I'm in support of that. However, I think back, as far as 2016, John Salamone was quoted in one of the local papers stating that he said he would reinstate the biweekly meetings at first to discuss specific issues such as equipment, apparatus needs, and building upkeep. Sounds familiar. These meetings were established in a prior year by John Bilda, then acting city manager. My question as a citizen is, if they did not work then to find ourselves where we are today, why would it be any different today? Again, generally though, I'm in support of it, and I would wish John the best of luck with that. Also, I brought this up during the after comments after the last meeting. There is, I believe it's in number 5, the word amalgamation is used in there. That specific word is a transitive verb, meaning to unite or especially to merge into a single body. We have heard tonight very, very emotional outbursts from some city council members that could take that one single word and change it at some point in the future to further inflame other people in the public is the fact that one of the individuals that were sponsoring this before is not only a member of one of the volunteer departments, but also serves in an administrative role in East Great Plains of any concern. Is she in fact serving the taxpayers or her volunteer department? This is why at times in the past I've said when it comes to fire issues, this might be an opportunity for that person to recuse himself. Again, the bottom line, I'm fully in support of many of the items in number 5 with a slight tweak to the language and no to number 4. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on the new business resolutions? Is there further discussion on the new business resolutions? Is there further discussion on the new business resolutions? Seeing no one else, I declare that hearing closed. Thank you.
New business number 1, relative to approving the list of applications under the Neighborhood Assistance Act.
Motion, please, to bring this forward. Alderman Ella Miles, is there a second? Alderman Wilson. Is there discussion? Seeing no discussion, roll call, please.
Alderman DeLucia?
Yes?
Alderman Miles?
Yes.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Nash? Yes. President Pro Tem Bettencourt?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
The resolution passes 7-0.
Number 2, relative to the approval of the Local 892 International Association of Firefighters Collective Bargaining Unit Agreement and the related budget changes to fiscal year 2020-2021.
Motion, please, to put this resolution on the floor. Alderman Ella Miles, second Alderman Gould. Is there discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderman DeLucia?
Yes?
Alderwoman Miles?
Yes.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Nash? Yes. President Pro Tem Bettencourt?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
7-0.
Motion passes 7-0. Resolution is approved.
Number 3, relative to amendment of the 2021-22 budget for expenditure adjustments related to the settlement of the firefighters bargaining unit contract.
Motion, please, bring it forward. Alderman Nash, second by Alderwoman Gould. Is there discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderman DeLucia?
Yes?
Alderwoman Miles?
Yes.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Nash? President Pro Tem Bettencourt?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
Motion passes 7-0.
Number 4, relative to city manager holding monthly meetings with the fire chiefs and reporting to the Public Safety Committee.
Motion to put this on the floor, please. Resolution 4. First by Alderman Gould. Is there a second? Alderman Nash. Is there discussion? Alderman DeLucia.
I move to table this resolution.
Second.
Motion to table by DeLucia and second by Bettencourt. Roll call, please.
Alderman DeLucia?
Yes?
Alderwoman Miles?
Yes.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Nash? Yes. President Pro Tem Bettencourt?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0 to table. Resolution number 5, relative to city manager holding monthly meetings with the police chiefs and reporting to the council.
Motion to put this forward, please. Alderman Bettencourt. Second, Alderman Wilson. Is there discussion? Alderman Bettencourt.
I'm going to ask the city manager to go ahead and do as you will with, as far as the meetings in both 4 and 5, as far as scheduling meetings in the meantime. But at this point in time, I would like to motion to table this resolution and bring it back at such time that, we will submit a rewritten version with some changes. That's all.
Is there a second? Second by Alderman DeLucia. Roll call, please.
Alderman DeLucia?
Yes.
Alderman Miles?
Yes.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Nash? President Pro Tem Bettencourt?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0 to table.
Motion passes 7-0 to table.
Number 6, relative to a resolution concerning Northeast Connecticut Council of Governments for an agreement for animal control services, lease of city animal control facilities, and sale of 2 vehicles used in connection with animal control services.
A motion, please, to bring this forward. Alderman Ella Miles, is there a second? Alderman Wilson, is there discussion? Seeing none, all those, I'm sorry.
Alderman
Roll
DeLucia?
call.
Yes.
Alderwoman Miles?
Yes.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Nash? Yes. President Pro Tem Bettencourt?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
7-0.
Motion passes 7-0.
New business ordinance. An ordinance amending zoning regulation, Section 2-2, summary of use by district, and zoning regulation, Section 2.5, planned commercial district, PC, principal use, and activities in a PC zone of the Norwich Code of Ordinances to add the following.
Thank you. At this time, I would ask for a motion to present this ordinance for first read, which would be July 6th, that we waive the full intent. Oh, okay, all right. We'll amend that. The motion will be to refer to this Commission on the City Plan to waive the full intent reading of the ordinance at this time. To such a motion. Alderman Bettencourt, Alderman Nash.
I talked to Deanna, and in order for my legal notices of 15 days, and her meeting of the city plan, she said this August 2nd.
Upon advice from council and consultation with our city planner, the earliest that we could look to have this public hearing is the first meeting in August. And that date is?
Second.
August 2nd, for the record.
I would so move.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you.
Alderman DeLucia?
Yes.
Alderman Miles?
Yes.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Nash?
Yes.
President Pro Tem Bettencourt?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
Motion passes 7-0. The hearing is scheduled for August 2nd.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Is there a second? Okay, Alderman Gould,
Prior-
second by Alderman Nash. Do you have
Prior to the motion to adjourn, I'd like a moment of personal preference, personal privilege.
privilege? Yes, sir. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Mayor, I'd like to apologize publicly. I made a comment publicly. I'd like the people in the room and people at home to hear me apologize for my comment earlier tonight. It was uncalled for and disrespectful, and I do regret it.
Thank you, and I accept your comment. Thank you, sir. Motion to adjourn by Alderman Gould, second by Alderman Nash. Call, please.
Alderman DeLucia?
Yes?
Alderman Miles?
Yes.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Nash?
Yes.
President Pro Tem Bettencourt?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
7-0.
Thank you all.